Welcome to the 24th video in the series, Foundations of Communist Organizing. Today we'll be going over the 1921 piece by Hermann Gorder, Open Letter to Comrade Lenin, which I have subtitled, Worker Leadership Emerges from Mass Revolutionary Action. In this text, in terms of worker organization, construction, structure, principles, and tactics, Hermann Gorder critiques Lenin's left communism and infantile disorder, along with the determinations of the Third International on groups of what he perceives as opportunism, due to the inapplicable conditions of the Russian Revolution being applied to the conditions of Western Europe, wherein capital is much more powerful. Gorder calls for the positioning of the ideological development of the masses and of class consciousness to be centralized, rather than the role of leadership, explaining that leadership arises out of strong mass organizations, ones that are pure in character, which is achieved through internal struggle, centralization, and discipline. Ultimately, the leader should form one united whole with the class, the mass, the party, and in turn, the economic weapons of the mass, which must be proletarian in character, industrial worker organizations. However, because of this, the role of leadership is less, and the mass is greater, as the leadership is not external to the mass. His position is that tactics should, in general, be based on the general tendency of conditions at any stage of the revolution, and thereby be dynamic. However, across the board, because the proletariat cannot rely on any other class, its tactics must be ones which raise the consciousness of masses and individuals, who are to be educated through practice to be revolutionary fighters that understand their responsibilities and that those responsibilities rest on them and them alone. In terms of organizations which can bring about this understanding, industrial unions, workshop organizations, and workers' unions are good weapons for this, as it teaches the workers to be able to act for themselves by controlling their leadership and supervising the entire organization. This is because every individual needs to be able to play an active role within an organization that is centralized. But within that centralization, it is open to action of those individuals. The foundations of the worker councils is a rank and file movement within factories and workshops, and there, parliamentary democracy does not take place, but rather all take action. Because truly revolutionary communists will necessarily separate themselves from social patriots, any attempt to organize with them will only lead to the weakening of the party. We cannot ally with bourgeois unions, parliamentary forces, and so on, as this ceases the development of revolutionary class consciousness. The masses must be able to understand the social construction ahead, take and accept the difficult decisions, and be roused to one creative impulse, the creation of a class dictatorship, which will in turn produce communism. This cannot be done without a vanguard to bring the masses to consciousness of its responsibilities, which requires that carry out pure action, propaganda, and internal organization that matches this. The workers must learn this and must not fall into leader politics, where they can shove off duty of action to some mythical leader or external forces. The liberation of the workers must be the work of the workers alone, and clever tactics of leaders will not carry the revolution. Leaders should be left to act, but their role cannot be the basis of the class party, which must train the workers to act as a class, to take action for and by themselves, which will cause them to coalesce into one mass. Ultimately, the question is if a tactic strengthens the spirit of the workers in terms of class consciousness, liberating them from state ideological apparatuses while also attacking imperialism, that is to say, landowners, industrial magnates, and merchant banking capital, which unifies all capitalists and petite bourgeois into one mass. Our propaganda, carried out in meetings, the press, through example, in slogans and actions on the shop floor, and therefore must be aimed at the working class and pay bourgeois elements, with the expectation that we will only receive a small fraction of the latter, while the rest will ally with capital against revolution. As pay bourgeoisie enter into the struggle, the party must have programs and tactics to expel those elements. As in the pay bourgeois elements, not necessarily individual people who happen to be pay bourgeois. So that means education of them as they enter into it, and also recognition that we're not going to get the vast majority of them. The vast majority are going to ally with capital and take up force as even more radical right-wingers and the like. So we should not be spending vast amounts of time trying to specifically aim for the petit bourgeois, but our politics should encompass essentially explaining that their lot is best with us. And we're not going to get the vast majority of them. That's fine, whatever. But we'll get some of them, and we need to have means to deal with that. Continuing. This also means that engagement in electoralism is counterproductive. Any quote-unquote wins gained through it are actually losses, as it harms the ideological development of the masses. The proletariat must be made independently revolutionary. To this end, any engagement with other worker organizations should not be done in the electoral sphere, but on the ground in all struggles. It is here that the masses will be prepared in terms of will and deed, and a proletariat is produced that is capable of fighting the unity of the bourgeoisie brought by imperialism, banking capital. A proletariat that is fully conscious, communist, and determined with unity. Due to the deferring role of the party, rather than the class dictatorship being a party dictatorship, instead it is a true class dictatorship, which the party must prepare the working class to achieve. To this end, the party must have revolutionaries that are 1. Politically conscious, 2. Convicted, 3. Ready for any deed necessary, and 4. Any sacrifice necessary. And any elements that are hesitant to any of these must be attenuated by the party's program, action, and tactics. This is necessary because it is the only way the party can produce a class that is truly revolutionary and communist, which requires propaganda, slogans, and the party taking lead in action and being purely revolutionary and communist itself. It is through such a party character that the kinds of leaders necessary will arise, wherein the program and tactics expel all uncertain and opportunist elements. Such a party will inspire the entire class with that creative impulse of communist spirit, revolution, and class dictatorship. Through correct action, the party, class, economic organizations, and leadership become one whole. This, however, is not immediate. Because economic organizations focus on those victories, they are necessarily reformist and ultimately tools. To this end, the bourgeois economic organs must be destroyed, as this result is inevitable. Only proletarian organs can remain. This is the communist industrial worker organization. Through centralization and discipline, however, which suborns the leadership to the class, all are brought into one whole as the revolution develops. In short, Gorder says that the left wing will create tactics for its own conditions, which, due to imperialism uniting all other classes against the revolution, will respond to this organizational power, recognize the power of banking capital, and focus on the masses. To this end, they will not ally with other classes, produce propaganda aimed at liberating the spirit of the proletariat from bourgeois ideology, destroy trade unions in favor for weapons of the proletariat, abandon parliamentarism which confuses the proletariat, focus on the down up, bring the masses around the party only if they are converted to be fully communist, and reduce the role of leaders. And that is my summary of Gorder's open letter to Comrade Lenin. As usual, if you'd like to see the quotations I derived this summary from, you can go to the description below and you'll find a link to this Google Doc. You'll also find a link to the United Marxist Pact Discord server. If you'd like to join in to talk about anything regarding this or anything else regarding communism, then we would love to have you. Tomorrow, we will be going through the 1922 piece by the Communist Party of Italy, Second Congress. Theses of Rome is what is titled. Theses on Tactics and Theses on the Agrarian Question. Thanks for joining me for today's topical summary, and I hope to see you then.